Good afternoon. I think live. Let's double check. Um, it's not the page I'm looking for. Okay, I'm live. Cool. So, I think the last stream was a couple of weeks ago. Let's do a quick recap. Stream notes, today's agenda. So the recap is I've done a lot of changes to the levels, or at least the second level, third level. They are still under construction. I'm introducing new game mechanics. There will be an enemy robot in the fourth level, so maybe we'll work on this today. So this guy is supposed to jump on you. Use this path. Speaking of which, our player is now represented by this robot. His name is George in the, as far as the file naming goes, this is George. I think the enemy is, I can't remember. We can look it up. Leela. So I think these are the names that the creator gave to the different types of robots. So these are the names. There's some basic animation. Let's run the game. I think I set the save file to second level, which should take us to the beginning of the second level. So here's our guy. He's his idle animation pose, so he's sort of flexing. The head is turning left and right sometimes. And that's going to be changed to walk and other animations as we go. So speaking of going, the player controls that used to be 2D buttons are now this sort of isometric view. The placement of this is not final. Most likely the dialog box is going to slide to the left, go out of the screen, and this guy will be here to have a bit more balanced UI. So right now everything is sort of work in progress, so this dialog thing is still under there, but click, we are able to walk forward, so the walk animation is triggered, and here we are flexing. So in other levels, if we have enemy characters, they will also be taking their turns. And now that we are here, we can move to the red marker, which should take us to this direction. These two are not visible, but by deduction, we can assume that the blue marker is here. We cannot move forward because that would be going into the space of this magic, whatever that is. I have ideas. So this will take you to the right tile or node or marker. So clicking the opposite of the blue marker we just did, we are going to come back. Now the rotation is not done yet for looking back, but I think I did the going right or left. They kind of work a little bit wonky. So we will first rotate, then move. For example, turning left did not really happen there. It should. We start the level. I believe here left turn works too. Similarly, right turn doesn't work. So that's something I can work on today. Movement mechanic. You could also work on HUD stuff, heads up display. The dialog box maybe, getting hidden, that kind of thing. And there are a few other things too, like say if we start the game fresh, things should appear a bit more nicely. Now when we load the levels, if we quit the game and say load where we left off, then that initial UI animation maybe shouldn't trigger that. So I guess I'm just I'm generally busy with a lot of things, so some key if else blocks were not properly written, so things kind of look hectic. But what I mean by shenanigans. It will also work on a few new models, primarily different colors, maybe different shapes of this fuel cell. I believe I have a list somewhere that will have different colors for representing either food or radioactive material or biohazard material. Things like that may not be used in the demo, nevertheless. Some variety and a few other models. I think I worked on a hydroponic model a while ago, almost actually 2 months ago. I think this had some transparency, which didn't transfer to Godot. Could work out things like I don't think this needs to be in cycles. But then the transparency doesn't quite work because we have to do the whatever. This doesn't have to be done here. It has to be done in Godot. So let's see. Let's close this. I think last but not least, game over conditions might be another interesting thing to work on. So in level 4, if the player decides to go this way, this tile here will be the game over situation. This enemy robot will jump on us. So speaking of markers and such, I think this should be enabled. But as far as improvements go, I think this morning I did this part. So the node markers, open the node marker scene and terminate the game. So a node marker is this circle. We may have these directions, which are basically lines, and whether those lines are visible or not are managed by its inspector, but it's also programmatically controlled. So setting them in the inspector will trigger functions. So they are visual markers, but they also indicate where the player can move. So this node marker node itself has an area 3D. If well, right now under the player, select the player. So the player has its own static body, basically a cube there, a box, which is intersecting with the area 3D of the node marker, and the node marker is basically right under his bum. So right at the beginning, I'm firing this body entered, which is later going to be triggered when the player moves forward or moves like right to the next node marker. So whenever a node marker is entered, even when at the beginning it's sort of like manually triggered, it's going to update the marker property for the player. Let's click this, which used to be exposed to the inspector, but it's not, which is okay, but this guy has a marker property. So the player always knows on which marker, code-wise. The code knows where the player is, on which markers. And depending on the marker's directions, we are updating. Let's run the game now. So these buttons are either looking disabled or clickable. So I'm clicking them, but we cannot go. So maybe visually there will be something much more pleasing than dull looking shape colors or colored shapes, right? So here it is. Maybe these buttons may sync or something like that. So let me try the right rotation first. Get a more like a much better sense that this guy is actually moving in the world. So I believe that is where we are. So this was my primitive attempt. So I think I'm going to investigate angle to function. Yep, first spam of today. Goodbye. So I added that person to the block list. Moving on. So I'm hitting the vector. So there's a destination, and this is where we are. And normalization will push the values between 0 and 1. Or yeah. It might also be -1. I'm not 100%. I think it's always positive. Anyway, it's unit, which means the values can never be beyond 1. They may be signed, minus or not, but so that's why I'm checking against sort of maximum, minimum values. Yeah, -1 is possible. So this is some assumption, but here's the problem here. I'm gonna have to check the either the Z or the Y. I think Z, because Y is always 0, because everybody is on the same elevation, right? So Y was always 0, but Z could be 1 or -1, which brings us to the interesting case where your X could be 1, but then your Z could be -1 or 1. So you gotta check for 2 possible Z values when X is 1. The same kind of thing for when X is -1, which could be getting out of hand very quickly. So right now, instead of turning our guy, we're gonna do something like just return the function, or we move forward or not. Basically no tween at all. I'm just going to return primitively. Sorry, prematurely here. What I want to do is destination angle to transform origin. This is gonna give us some angle. That's what I want to. And this is just being calculated. So let's run. So what is supposed to happen right now is when I hit this blue marker, this code will trigger. Because I put the return statement, we are not going to see the forward movement, but we are supposed to see the angle between where we are and where we want to go. So basically, what's the angle between this position and our position? Some 32% something. Now this is in radians. Returns the unsigned minimum angle to the given vector in. Now this is the part that actually kind of confused me, not because it's in radians, because we could do something like radian to degrees. So that's 18. So that seemed wrong to me. Yeah, that's something. Also, position A angle to position B is not the same thing as position B angle to position A. However, relatively speaking, this might converge to the same value. Maybe the sign will be different. Let me clear this output. Yeah. So I was reading about this. Godot angle to... I don't want to... Well, I mean, I hope it's not broken. There are some bugs here and there because I'm using the 4th version. So there are still... Like, for example, rotation degrees are kind of work in progress. Because, let me just... So the description here is saying that... so in version 3, these were degree values. Then at some point in 4, they changed them to radians. But a lot of people found out that they have code which is basically giving degrees, and internally what Godot 3.x was doing is not working in 4. Whatever version, right? So now they are trying to change it back to the way Godot 3. So it's one way that you see it here, but internally they kind of work differently. So there might be weird things like that. I don't really know. This is not something I used before. So it's a new domain, so I'm not quite sure what to expect here. Like, I'm not even familiar with the expected behavior. I don't necessarily know if something is amiss. But things like this makes me nervous. Also, the samples that I see, they are always in 2D space. Which is another interesting topic. So let's read this documentation. This is clearly vector 3, angle 2. So for debugging purposes, this is what I'm going to suggest. These two are practically the same for our specific case. I'm going to do this. Let's do print s. This is going to put space between those 3 instructions. So let's run it again. So our destination is at -4, 0, 2. We are at -4, 0, 4. We can actually confirm that. Here's our player. This is transform origin, which is the second call. The first one is where we want to go, which is this one, -4. Yeah, I elevated this, but I have the marker, but from marker, what's an easy way to say this? So when I call this function figure out where to move, I'm always ignoring that y value. So I'm basically saying, well, whenever you are going to move in any direction, you're always adding 2 to the proper axis. So if we are going to move from -4 to whatever this forward means here, like in this direction, I think it's this one. Well, it's working because visually I can see it's moving to the right. So node marker 2 is where we want to go. Okay, yeah, because I know that we are going west. So from this, we subtract 0, 0, 2, which should take this value to -4, 0, 2. -4, 0, 2, which is this. Roughly speaking, 0.1 is where the marker is really in the world, but as far as the guy is supposed to, like where he's supposed to go, we are going somewhere in the world with this, while y being 0. So the math checks out. However, here's a bit of a confusing situation. Since angle 2 is radian, and I converted it to degrees, I'm getting 18 degrees. I mean, I sure hope they are not updating the documentation and this is not the old documentation. Let me go check the online documentation for the stable version. Angle 2. The 3 methods, angle 2. So it's always in radians. It's unsigned, so that's also good. Hey, Mertjan. I think you tried to type some icon. What I see is a face turquoise, drinking coffee, hand pink waving. So some face, drinking coffee, and waving. So, hi to you. I'm not sure why the icons didn't show up. Maybe it does in the YouTube interview. But not in the software that I'm using. I'm using the Restream chat window on the side, but it's not supporting the icons. So there is also direction too. Returns the normalized vector pointing from this vector to B. This is equivalent to, which is basically what I was doing. B minus A normalized. Hey, YouTube emojis, yeah. So from your name, I'm thinking you're in Turkey, and as I'm guessing most of the world knows, earthquake zone. So I hope you're in a safe place. And good luck otherwise, since the country is always in some kind of turmoil or shit show. Besides earthquakes. What if we get the direction to? Which is this rotation? But let's get that anyway. So destination, direction to transform origin. So when we click again, we get 0, 0, 1. And I think that's when I was doing this. And vector 0, 0, 1. Some constants. 0, 0, 1 is a back vector, back unit. We're in Istanbul, but yeah, it's yeah, I used to live in Istanbul. I lived there for 28 years, then moved here. It's well, it's a shit show. Any given day, there's always something. Back unit vector. So what I'm thinking, whatever vector we get, what if we did something like this? Don't return. Do this. And instead of limiting it by y, so I was rotating around y. What if we, but problem though, because if I do in degrees, it's a unit vector, right? I can do rotation, but what I'm gonna suggest is relative. So whatever this gives us may cover those two other cases that I was describing earlier. So okay, let's restart. I am suspecting some bizarre behavior there. Yeah. Definitely, yeah. Yep. Transform, which will take us to rotation. Rotation part of the local transformation in radians, specified in terms of Euler angles. The angles construct the rotation order. That's why using rotation degrees is helpful, because it's actually so you just type degrees and it's doing internal calculation. So when I got 001, what does it mean? The 3D space. What it means is I'm looking at the gizmo here, or let's look at this guy, same thing. So 0 in the X, which is this, 0 in the Y, which is this green, and it says 1. So one would make me think it's supposed to go this way, 1 unit. Yet is that because our guy is rotated, so it's -1? Also, I mean, this is clearly wrong, but from this vector to, oh, okay, okay. So I'm answering my own question. Because I did destination direction to transform origin, from this point to where we are, of course it's 1. So that checks out. Because I should do the opposite, so like from where I am, what's the direction to the destination? So if I do this the opposite way, that checks out. But it's still not going to, well, this is all screwed up anyway, but let's restart. So it's just going to do the other way, going down. And this is applied as relative. Which used to be the norm. Start the level again. Because it's a different approach. Yup. Rotation order Y first. I think there won't be much difference between these two. Yeah. I think X might be. And I still think this is not going to be the solution, because when we want to turn a different way, that's going to be a problem. And then it didn't matter anyway. I want to go basis. So clearly, okay, this is giving unit vector, right? It's either 0, 0, 1 or 0, 1, 0. I'm gonna insist on using degrees as 90. Then I should not assign this to rotation like that. For weird reasons. Do something like this. Then turn this into rotation degrees. Let's see what kind of weird thing is gonna happen. Well, it did something. So this is now giving 0, 0, minus 1. When we multiply it by 90, it's 0, 0, minus 90, which is not good because we don't want to change this actually. That's the condition right at the beginning. We don't want to rotate. So whatever value we are calculating, it should, imagine we are doing the calculation here. This should result as 0, 0, 0. But now I actually changed this to current, this relative. So whatever I just said is for the relative. So relatively speaking, the rotation degrees should change by 0, 0, 0 going forward. However, I know that this is actually 0, 0, minus 1. So that's a bit of a problem. One thing we can do is we always, just a second. We never want to rotate around X. We also never want to rotate around Z. So we want to rotate around Y, hence this. So when we get direction 2, this is 0, 0, minus 1. So I might be able to control it only on the Y. So yeah. I'm gonna check the stream timers because I think that's also broken too. So this is supposed to work and I can clearly see it's not working. bot. So if you type exclamation mark info, you'll get information about, I think, what we are doing, what I'm doing right now. Steam is going to take you to our Steam page, Udemy. You'll see a link to the Udemy course and who is about us. Basically, it's a solo operation. I occasionally hire freelance help. Wire Games is just a one-man operation right now. So, after the brief commercials. Let's think of the next case. Imagine we are here. And he's going to sort of do up and down, whatever. There you go. Is this the right? We could technically start the game here because I already have that markers calculating their directions out of automatic lookup. So this is what I expect when I hit right. It's yellow. Of course, it's gonna look awkward. But here we see -100. The error is as relative on a null value. What do you mean null value? Destination. Destination is -202, which is good. Yeah, which is here. Cannot call method as relative on a null value, which means twin is null. Yet it exists. I think what's happening here is that this kind of screwed up. This comes as null. Relative is. I don't know why this would fail, but I think I know why. Because this is supposed to be a number, and I'm passing a vector to a number, which failed. So that means this is null. That checks out. That's fine. I'm not gonna fix that problem because it's gonna go away. I'm interested in this vector -100. So 3D space -100 means -1 is in the x. So as I was saying, like where you want to go. I mean, I also wish this angle 2 would work because let's just go back to that. Let's do a return here again. I might have to swap these two. Let's see. Here we are. 18 degrees. This doesn't make any sense at all. So I'm gonna cheat here a bit. So I know that this is what I was getting, 32%. Which is this. Why would it be 18 degrees? For those of you who don't know like how this works, so when I type 180, you are going to miraculously see the number pi. So to describe degrees, so they go by radian, which is pi, which means for a unit circle, if the radius is 1, your the diameter times pi is the circumference of the circle, right? Or disk, whatever. So 360 is basically 2 pi, because for 1 unit, like radius 1, you do 2 times radius, which is the diameter. So 2 times pi is this, which is 360. So a quarter of the circle is half the pi. So when we get this kind of radian value, it's 18 degrees. So what is ridiculous right now about this number is that it thinks where I am, where I want to go, the angle is 18 degrees. And how could that be, is the question. Because where I am, where I want to go, how could that be 18 degrees? 18 degrees would be something like 90 degrees divided by 5, and this is 90 degrees. 18 degrees would be something like this. That's the ridiculous part. Which is why I might completely ignore the y-axis and do something like this. I don't get it, honestly. Say destination. This has 2 parts. X and Z. We're only interested in the X and Z. So here's a vector. 2. Here's another vector, which is transform origin Z and X. So we are only taking the first part and the third part. So we could do angle 2. Angle to point. I might have to investigate that too, because I've had suspicion all along. So this should give us, assuming this is going to be 90 degrees, should give us 1.57. Let's do a print call here. And I'm just gonna disable this one, run again. So here, oh, I wasn't running the game anyway. So let's go, continue, turn right. Still the same bullshit 32, which is wrong. So if I actually get this, it's still going to give me the wrong 18 degrees. So here we go. 18. So clearly, either the function is broken, or I don't know what I'm doing, which is more than likely. Destination angle. How come I was seeing angle to point in vector 2 but not here? So this doesn't exist in vector 3. First angle between the line connecting the 2 points. This is kind of what I want. Okay, so because I'm changing things to 2D space, this might work. 2 points. This is also again in radians, okay? So this might work. I saved 180. I think I'm gonna give this problem a few more minutes, then maybe I'll do some Blender work, because it's not fun. How could it be 180 degrees though? It sort of makes sense. -2, -4. -4. -2. Yeah, honestly, I don't get it. My earlier approach was to use dot product. That also didn't pan out. This didn't work either. It can be used to determine whether an enemy is facing the player, which is perfect. The dot product will be 0 for a straight angle. This is supposed to work. So when it's 0, it's 90 degrees. When it's higher than 0, it's broken. Sorry about that. If you are getting multiple messages, it's because the world is full of inferior products these days. I don't get it. If that works, doesn't it? So that's gonna keep happening until I install a better product. You might be getting a lot of messages in the chat. So when it's higher than 0 or greater than 0, so it goes between -1 and +1. So 0 is the straight angle. When using normalized vectors, I'm willing to give this another try. I feel like I've tried this before. Push this up. This is... So let's do another print S in case. Destination normalized dot transform origin normalized. Give me something. Here. %, which is what exactly? So I'm using normalized vectors for the width part and the vector that I'm running this operation on. The result will always be between -1, which is not, when the vectors are facing opposite directions, and 1 when the vectors are aligned. So it's almost aligned. That's the problem part. So how could they be almost aligned? Because if it was 1, I actually know, like, if you get 0, they are 90 degrees apart. So there was actually a graphic for this, right? Dot product. There are images for this. For example, this one. I think I'm making a fundamental mistake here. I think the mistake I'm making is confusing vectors with position. Position is described as a vector 3, but it's not really a vector. You could consider it as a vector, assuming it's the vector from the world origin, which is 0, 0, 0. But if our player is on 0, 0, 0, there is no length. So the magnitude will be 0. So what we are trying to do is, so here when we take dot product of A and B, it's going to give us 0, but what I'm actually trying to do is something like, if A is where I want to go, practically in my case B is sort of 0, right? Because I'm here, I want to go here. Should I just keep moving forward? Or if I'm here and I'm facing this way, I want to go to B, so I should actually rotate. None of that actually warrants for vector information. So what I actually need is kind of like position. So that's the fundamental problem. However, to describe it better, let's look at the forward vector, which is so the name forward makes you think it's sort of x positive, but regardless, the point that I'm trying to make here is this is where we want to be. When it says forward vector -1 in z, it's actually kind of this direction, but and that's a conversation about like whether in any given 3D software you have the axis meaning or corresponding to meaningful names. I've read some Reddit posts. This doesn't make actually much sense, but this is what Godot does. Like a lot of people expect forward to be not -1 because, you know, positive sounding forward. Anyway, as far as our character goes, this player, if you play this game, your perception will be such that, oh, this guy is facing the door. So this is his forward. But his forward vector is actually this blue direction, or the confusion, it's actually the -1. It's actually this way, regardless. What we are trying to do here is there's this vector, position data, and there's this guy. So what we want to do in the end is, sorry, the other way around. This was my 180. We want to add subtract minus. When we start at minus 180, we want to take it down to 270. And that's what I was trying to do here, right? When x is 1, yeah, this is seriously dumb. Okay, I'm gonna switch to some other work. It's not fun stream material, I bet. Let's just have a working condition here. So rotate. That's clearly wrong, but yeah, it should have done the. Anyway, that's going to be tackled. So let's do here. Clean up this rotation mess. Okay. Now, what I could be doing is to introduce the hydropod again, or hydroponic, which should be somewhere. I believe this is already in the file system. Hydroponic, yeah. There's a scene. So I think this did not come. Yeah, the transparency was missing from the material, right? There's the top part, which is capsule 001. So let's actually label that properly. So let's call this dome. This is the base. Okay, so then we export this again into props, hydroponic, fine, export. I might have to reduce some of those materials. Base dome, that's fine. Now dome is, there's the material, surface 0. Now, this is something that I kind of remember being able to do. Okay, in sometimes it doesn't let me edit, and this time it did. So transparency is alpha. Uses albedo. Normally the color should be some, I think, light blue. Yeah, that's not really transferred, but let's put this hydroponic in our scene in level 2 for just test purposes. So I'm gonna go under props. Let's put one here. See it? It is clearly not transparent. Because I even remember putting tomatoes in there. You will wonder, what do you mean tomatoes? Tomatoes are coming from a different game that I used to work on. urban farmer. Tomato. So let's just disable the DOM. So here's tomato. So these tomatoes should be looking sort of floating. One or two. Let's rotate. So we should be able to see them. Save. Go to level 2. Let's move here. So here are the tomatoes. Let's run the game again. So they should be seen under a semi-transparent dome, which is this. So this is apparently not quite working. So this is glass. So alpha vortex color. All mode disabled. Metallic. Was weird. Okay. It's still not transparent. This is not going to be transparent because the transparency means if the texture has transparent parts, so it's actually reading the alpha channel, but there's nothing that indicates transparency except this. There you go. So let's do this half. Save. It works here. Hello. So let's apply that color in here is a hex code, which is this. That's the same color. I'm gonna rerun the scene. I don't see it in yeah, if I'm not seeing it applied here, here's my suspicion. Whatever I do here is not reflected back in the main scene. That's actually what I was trying to say earlier. So here's actually the GLB file. So the resource is glass. You remember exporting glass material at some point. Here's the material. Oh. This is not the same glass material. Still not applied. Okay, here's the difference. When I do back like that, front is gonna remove what we see as the front, so this is the back part, so disable will render both. This is always sort of visible. I don't get it. So if I'm seeing it here, essentially this. Yeah, why are so many of these kind of customized? I don't remember seeing them before. Okay, let's look at the base. So we have multiple surfaces for different colors and shapes. This is the main. Resource-wise, it's actually built in. And that's my suspicion. That's like I feel like I'm changing, but it's only changing here internally or sort of locally, and here there is no difference. It's not transparent at all. You'd be able to see the tomatoes here. This acts opaque. So when I remove this, wait a second. Okay, so I had to save, but yeah. Let's remove the DOM, save, and then so let's double click glass material. Let's be here because whatever changes that I'm gonna make should actually change something here. And I have a feeling nothing is ever gonna happen here. This glass material is I'm gonna change this to PBR. Save this, close, go to Blender, open hydroponic. This shading, this plus. So let's change this to principled. The transparency here is going to be So cycles, use transparency. Right? What am I missing? Oh shit. Let's try this. I don't know how this alpha will do the dose material. Oops. I don't. This dome. Kinda does. There you go. Okay, that's more like it. So continue, and here's. So in the final render, it doesn't work. I'm gonna. Is it here? Another camera. I will make this the current camera. Camera will be 6 maybe, even 4. Will be 3. Run. New. So when I double click this glass material, clearly these values are wrong. This is not the same thing as what I was just editing. This is all different, which makes me think this is wrong. Here's the thing, when I delete this, it's did. That's the built-in material. Then I wonder why am I seeing it here? Say, wait, let's do children editable dome. We don't have any override. Here's this, which is this. This says glass. So I'm gonna look at hydro GLB, import advanced. Here's glass material, which is this. So it's under, it's cylinder 001. It's the material. Save to file enabled. But that's actually going to save the mesh. When we do use external thing at some point, this is what I... So models, props. Let's do glass here. Glass that. And that actually has to exist. Doesn't exist yet. So new resource. Standard material. Plus. Advanced materials glass. So we are mapping the Blender glass material to this material. Let's do re-import. This is all wrong. That's kind of expected. And the walls actually have their own glass material. That's fine. They have windows. So for this, I'm gonna pick a color here that should be this color. So that's a good start. Let's do the alpha here, which isn't gonna work. So we turn on this alpha. And that's much better. And we want to do depth test because otherwise the vertices that are kind of invisible in the model, they are sneaking out. Because there's actually a vertex ending here. So let's run. There you go. I actually did this in version 3. I did the exact process, but I think some things are not carried over to 4. Here's the hydropod. And maybe we'll animate those tomatoes at some point. Speaking of this, hydroponic, at some point I think we also had pod. So let's create a scene. Let's actually put it on under here, then take it out. Pod. Oh, we must have a pod. Okay, there you go. We do have a pod. Let's move it here. This pod is, well, advanced. This is glass. Let's bind the same glass to import. There you go. Okay. So now when we run the level, this is coming from funnily enough, in Godot version 3, the material import process was better. I took this screenshot when this was in 3. All the transparency was coming in perfectly fine, I think. Anyway, this is just a screenshot. This is a real render in the back. This is inside the Godot. It's running at runtime. So basically, I'm trying to match the previous quality to what we're seeing. Or what we are seeing, I'm trying to match that to what we used to have. Let's remove that new camera. It will automatically go back to the first camera. Okay. So I suppose because this actually has denser part, right? Under the dome, we see most of the inner side, just like here. This naturally looks darker than this one. Or maybe we could adjust it. What I'm also noticing is that what we are seeing here is not what we are rendering. This has more blue qualities than this one. This looks greenish. Yet here they look both the same, which indicates that there's probably some environment effect here. Nevertheless, yeah, let's disable the ambient light. I'm okay with that. Let me see if this is actually making a difference live here. It does here, and yet it's here. But I know this does. Shaded. This is interesting because it's actually the blend mode is add. Effect here is quite different. It doesn't change anything here though. This is also interesting. When we do subtract, we actually see this bottom really dark. Kind of made this look wonky. Multiply is also, sometimes it's nice, but here's the major difference. Here, what we see in the scene is quite different here when it's rendered. Because there is post-processing effects kicking in. It's not gonna do much difference. Interesting. This might be an interesting effect. Let's turn on the transparency. Let's disable backlighting. It's actually interesting because it's setting a little bit more reflective quality, or sort of this glowing. So with or without it, it's maybe this glass is this doesn't have thickness, but I might have given this thickness. Subdivision. Did I actually give this thickness? I've applied at some point. So how do we see that? No, we don't have thickness, because I would have seen object mode. Then the question is, does the pod have thickness? This pod. Let's do edit mode. Use. No, it's okay, it's super simple. By the way, when I'm exporting this, I'm not applying the modifiers, which may drastically change things. Gotcha. I have to re-render. There might... I haven't actually seen it. I wasn't paying attention. Okay, I like that. I think that the whole difference is the subdivision and such. This doesn't look too chunky anymore. And here's the backlighting. It actually adds that. Maybe this actually has to be a little bit with or without it. Okay. Refraction. Nope. That's actually an interesting effect. We don't really have reflective surfaces though in this game yet. I think this might be it. This is nice too, it's subtle. It's that sort of like glow thing. Let's investigate emission and then maybe I think I'll sign off. This is too overwhelming because this value is just too high. You should notice that. That's it. And they are going with physical units, but that 1000 by default is just too intense. So without emission and without backlighting, so this is transparent. It's okay. This is some, there's some glow there, and here is backlighting. So might be interesting. So on that note, I think I'm gonna sign off and have lunch/dinner. So today's stream was about investigating the direction, the rotation stuff. I'm not quite sure whether I'm making a fundamental sort of error in judging how the degrees will be calculated. I hope it's not something that is half done in Godot 4 point release candidate 2. And then the rest of the stream was to do a few material assignments and changes, a few models. So we brought in this hydroponic unit and the pod, and remapped the materials that were okay in Godot 3 point something. Apparently they did not really carry over to version 4. So they are reassigned, so they are done. And as far as the rest of the agenda goes, so I think the rest of the week I'll be spending for fixing the HUD issues. So the proper menu appearing when the dialog box goes off screen, that kind of thing is done. There will be objectives done so that to reload the level, you should see the previous objectives done. There will be new models. I'm actually bringing in new models. So like this fuel cell is also new for this level. I think we could actually just play this for now. Yeah, so this menu coming in here means it's actually doing the goal. Once you reach here, you're gonna see the end of level text, and if you press 1, even though we don't see the dialog, we will reload the next level. So these markers won't be here. You will see the dialog. When you say, okay, let's start the level, the dialog screen will go off and the markers will come, so you can actually control your character. The rotation is just awful. It's not working. It's doing weird things. And here the end of the level is done, so we press 1. I know the shortcut. We play this level. So again, don't mind the rotations. So by game over condition in the topic list, this is what I mean. If we choose this path and come here, this guy is gonna knock us out. So overall, there will be more stuff done, hopefully. I see you, or you see me next time. And I'll try to come up with a Steam page and hopefully put this up there as a demo so you can all play and give me feedback. So I'll probably announce all this via Twitter and other channels if you are following. I hope you stay tuned and see you on the next one.